The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the sound of 1,000 different species, each contributing their own unique vocal patterns to the cacophony. Ambassador Zexhai of the Vorthak Empire tapped his six-clawed fingers against the crystalline podium, his reptilian features twisted into what passed for amusement among his kind. The emergency session had been called to address the growing threat of the Krillian horde, a savage species that had been systematically consuming entire star systems along the outer rim of known space. Honored delegates, Zexhai's voice carried across the chamber through universal translators. We face an unprecedented crisis. The Krillian swarm has already devoured 47 inhabited worlds. Their bioships grow stronger with each planet they consume, incorporating the biological matter of entire civilizations into their fleet. We estimate they will reach the core worlds within 6 standard cycles. A collective shudder ran through the assembled representatives. The Krillians were nightmare fuel given form, a hive-minded species that viewed all other life as nothing more than raw material for their endless expansion. Their ships were living creatures the size of small moons, capable of reproducing exponentially when fed enough organic matter. Chancellor Vecmara of the Altarian Confederacy rose from her floating platform, her translucent blue skin shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that indicated deep concern. The combined fleets of 17 major civilizations have already engaged the Krillian advance force. We lost 60% of our ships before we could even damage their outer vessels. Traditional warfare appears ineffective against their adaptive biology. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Galactic Council had faced many threats over the millennia, but nothing quite like this. The Krillians didn't just conquer, they consumed, leaving nothing but barren husks of worlds in their wake. "What are the ethereal collective's psionic weapons?" asked General Tharndok of the militant Goric Union, his massive frame making the reinforced seating creak ominously. The Goric were known throughout the galaxy for their military prowess, standing nearly 3 meters tall with natural armor plating and strength that could crush steel. If even they seemed concerned, the situation was truly dire. "Ineffective," came the reply from the ethereal representative, a being of pure energy contained within a sophisticated containment suit. The Krillian hive mind operates on frequencies we cannot penetrate. They appear to have natural defenses against psychic intrusion. Ambassador Zexhai pulled up a holographic display showing the current galactic map. Entire sectors along the rim glowed an ominous red, indicating Krillian-controlled territory. The red was spreading inward like a cancer, consuming everything in its path. "We have received responses from all major civilizations regarding military contributions to our defensive coalition," Zexhai announced, manipulating the display to show fleet compositions. The Centaurian Republic offers 12 battle cruisers and 4 dreadnoughts. The Nexus Concordat pledges 18 heavy destroyers and their experimental quantum torpedoes. The Zephyrian Trade Alliance provides support vessels and their renowned shield technology. The list continued for several minutes, each civilization offering their most advanced military assets. Plasma cannons, gravitational weapons, temporal disruptors, molecular disintegration beams. The combined firepower represented the pinnacle of galactic military technology. Then came an entry that caused the entire chamber to fall silent. "Earth." Zexhai paused, checking his data pad twice to ensure he had read correctly. "The Human Coalition offers 3 soldiers." The silence stretched for exactly 4.7 seconds before the chamber erupted in a mixture of laughter, outrage, and disbelief. The sound was a bizarre symphony of roars, clicks, whistles, and harmonics that the translation systems struggled to process. 3 soldiers. General Tharndok's booming voice cut through the noise. "Is this some form of human humor we fail to comprehend?" Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian Trade Alliance, whose species was known for their calculating nature and obsession with efficiency, stood on his mechanical leg extensions. "Perhaps there was an error in transmission. Surely they mean 3 divisions or 3 fleets." Zexhai manipulated his data pad again, pulling up the official communication from Earth's governing body. The message is quite clear. Earth's Unified Defense Council states, and I quote, "In response to the Krillian crisis, Earth pledges 3 volunteer soldiers from our Special Operations Division. Transportation to the staging area will be arranged independently." The laughter resumed, though now it carried a bitter edge. The Vorthack delegation's scales rippled with what their species' equivalent of mirth. Several of the smaller civilizations' representatives began chattering among themselves in their native languages, their translators struggling to convey the mixture of humor and indignation. "This is an insult," declared Senator Morgeth of the Titan hegemony, her four arms gesturing dramatically. "We face extinction, and the humans send 3 individuals? Do they not comprehend the magnitude of this threat?" Ambassador Zexhai had to admit that he found the human response puzzling. Earth was a relatively new member of the Galactic Council, having achieved interstellar travel only 2 centuries ago. In galactic terms, they were barely past their technological infancy. Their military contributions to previous conflicts had been minimal but competent, typically involving small units that served support roles for larger alien forces. What made their current offer particularly baffling was that humans had proven themselves to be surprisingly effective soldiers in the few conflicts where they had participated. They possessed an unusual combination of creativity, adaptability, and sheer stubbornness that had impressed several military commanders. But 3 soldiers against a horde that had consumed nearly 50 worlds? Perhaps we should consider the possibility that humanity simply lacks the resources to contribute meaningfully, suggested Dr. Quintala of the Academic Union, her multiple eye stalks swiveling to focus on the holographic display. "Their homeworld has a relatively small population compared to our major civilizations, and their technology, while innovative, remains primitive by galactic standards." This assessment wasn't entirely unfair. Earth's population of 8 billion seemed modest compared to the trillion-citizen worlds of the core systems. Their ships relied on chemical propulsion and primitive fusion reactors, while most galactic civilizations had mastered antimatter and exotic matter manipulation. Human weapons were still largely projectile-based, firing metal slugs at high velocity, effective but crude compared to energy weapons that could disintegrate matter at the molecular level. A move that we politely acknowledge Earth's gesture and redistribute their assigned sector to more capable forces, announced Chancellor Vexmira. Sector designation Theta 7 can be covered by an additional Centaurian task force. General Tharndok nodded his massive head in agreement. The humans have shown courage in offering assistance, but courage without capability serves no purpose against the Krillian threat. Better to preserve their lives for conflicts they can actually influence. Zexhai was about to call for a formal vote when his communication device chimed with an urgent message. The data stream was flagged with the highest priority encryption, indicating it came from the Intelligence Division of the Galactic Defense Network. "Honored delegates," he announced after reviewing the information, "I have received an update from our reconnaissance division. Long-range sensors have detected a significant development in the Krillian advance." The chamber quieted as Zexhai manipulated the holographic display. The image zoomed in on the outer rim, showing a sector where 3 Krillian bioships had been steadily approaching a mining colony on Zirian Prime. The ships were massive, each 1 kilometer in length, and covered in the distinctive organic hull that marked Krillian vessels. Sensor readings showed millions of life forms within each ship, ready to descend upon any world they encountered. Zirian Prime reported contact with the Krillian Advance Force approximately 6 hours ago. Zexhai continued. Standard protocol dictated immediate evacuation, but the colony's transport capacity was insufficient to evacuate all 30,000 inhabitants in time. Worried murmurs filled the chamber. Zirian Prime was a minor mining world, but it represented thousands of lives and served as an important source of rare minerals used in advanced shield generators. Its loss would be both tragic and strategically significant. However, Zexhai said, his tone shifting to something approaching confusion, "Our latest sensor sweep shows something unexpected." The display updated, showing the current status of the Zirian system. Where 3 Krillian bioships should have been consuming the planet, there was only empty space and debris fields. "The Krillian ships are gone," Zexhai announced. Zirian Prime reports they are safe and requests immediate scientific teams to study the wreckage of what appears to be 3 destroyed Krillian vessels. The silence that followed was different from before. Where earlier there had been amusement and frustration, now there was genuine bewilderment. The destruction of even a single Krillian bioship required massive coordinated assault by multiple fleets. The idea that 3 of them had been destroyed in a single engagement was almost impossible to process. "That's impossible," General Tharndoke stated flatly. "Our intelligence indicates the nearest military force was the 7th Centaurian Fleet, and they were still 4 systems away from Zirian Prime. The 7th Fleet confirms they had no engagement with Krillian forces in that sector," Zexhai replied, checking his data stream again. "According to their logs, they received the distress call from Zirian Prime and were en route to provide evacuation support when the all-clear signal was transmitted." Chancellor Vexmira's bioluminescent patterns shifted to indicate deep thought. Could there have been some sort of malfunction in the Krillian ships? Perhaps their biological systems experienced some form of cascade failure. Dr. Quintala's eye stalks swiveled to examine the sensor data more closely. Highly unlikely. Krillian bioships are incredibly resilient. They're designed to adapt to almost any form of damage. Spontaneous system failure of 3 ships simultaneously would be statistically impossible. The mystery deepened when additional reports began flowing in from other sectors along the Krillian advance. Similar incidents were occurring across multiple fronts. Small groups of Krillian ships would approach inhabited systems, and then simply disappear, leaving behind debris fields and confused survivors. This pattern suggests coordinated action by an unknown force, observed Ambassador Veltar, his mechanical appendages clicking together as he processed the data. But our combined intelligence networks have no record of any military force capable of engaging Krillian bioships with such effectiveness. Zexhai was about to respond when his communication device chimed again. This time, the message came directly from Zirian Prime's colonial administration. The transmission was brief, but carried implications that sent a chill through the assembled delegates. Zirian Prime reports the following. Zexhai read from his datapad, his voice taking on an increasingly puzzled tone. 3 unidentified individuals made contact with colonial officials approximately 1 hour before the Krillian ships arrived. These individuals claimed to be advanced scouts for a defensive operation and requested permission to establish a temporary base of operations on the planet's second moon. The chamber erupted in surprised chatter as delegates began to process the implications. The colonial administrator granted permission, noting that the 3 individuals carried advanced equipment of unknown origin. Approximately 30 minutes later, all 3 Krillian bioships were reported destroyed. The 3 individuals departed Zirian Prime shortly thereafter, leaving behind only a brief message stating they would continue monitoring the sector for additional Krillian activity. General Tharndoke's massive frame shifted forward in his seat. 3 individuals destroyed, 3 Krillian bioships? This report must be in error. Zirian Prime's sensor logs have been transmitted to our analysis division, Zexhai replied. Preliminary review confirms the destruction of 3 vessels matching Krillian bioship signatures. The method of destruction remains unclear, as the sensor readings show energy signatures that don't match any known weapon system. Ambassador Veltar's mechanical appendages ceased their clicking. Did Zirian Prime's administrators identify these 3 individuals? Were they able to determine their species of origin? Zexhai manipulated his data pad once more, pulling up the final section of Zirian Prime's report. What he read there caused his reptilian features to freeze in an expression of complete bewilderment. According to the colonial administrator's log, he announced slowly, the 3 individuals identified themselves as representing Earth's military forces. Physical descriptions match human physiological parameters. The chamber fell into absolute silence. Not the brief pause of surprise, but the profound quiet that occurs when an entire assembly of beings simultaneously attempts to reconcile impossible information with observed reality. 3 human soldiers had somehow managed to accomplish what entire fleets of the galaxy's most advanced military forces had failed to achieve. They had not just engaged Krillian bioships, they had destroyed them completely, and apparently with enough ease that they were able to continue patrolling for additional threats. The implications were staggering and deeply unsettling for many of the assembled delegates. If humanity possessed military capabilities that could trivialize the Krillian threat, why had they only offered 3 soldiers? More importantly, what else were the humans capable of that the galaxy didn't know about? Ambassador Zexhai found himself staring at the holographic display, watching as additional reports of mysterious Krillian ship destructions continued to flow in from across the Outer Rim. Each incident followed the same pattern. Small teams of unidentified individuals would arrive at threatened systems, engage Krillian forces, and depart with minimal communication. The humans, it seemed, had not sent 3 soldiers because that's all they could spare. They had sent 3 soldiers because that's all they needed. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been adjourned 3 hours ago, but Ambassador HFY remained in his private office, staring at the cascade of intelligence reports flooding his communication array. Each new transmission painted an increasingly impossible picture of military engagement across the Outer Rim territories. The humans had not exaggerated their contribution. 3 soldiers were indeed operating in the contested zones, but their effectiveness defied every principle of warfare that galactic civilization had developed over millennia of conflict. In the past 18 standard hours, 47 Krillian bioships had been destroyed across 12 different star systems. Each engagement followed the same pattern. 3 unidentified individuals would appear in the threatened system, establish minimal communication with local authorities, and then proceed to eliminate all Krillian forces with surgical precision. HFY's door chimed, and General Tharndok entered without waiting for permission. The massive Goric warrior's natural armor plating showed stress fractures around the edges, indicating extreme agitation. Behind him followed Chancellor Vexmira, her normally serene bioluminescent patterns flickering erratically, and Dr. Quintala, whose multiple eye stalks swiveled independently as she processed data from a portable analysis unit. Ambassador, General Tharndok's voice carried a tone HFY had never heard from the usually confident military leader. We need to discuss the human situation immediately. My intelligence division has been monitoring communications from the combat zones, and what we've discovered challenges everything we thought we understood about warfare. HFY gestured for his visitors to be seated, though Tharndok remained standing due to his size. I assume you've reviewed the tactical reports? The humans' effectiveness is certainly impressive, though I suspect there may be factors we're not yet aware of. That's precisely the problem. Chancellor Vexmira interjected, her patterns shifting to a deep blue that indicated profound concern. We've been attempting to analyze their combat methodology, but the sensor readings make no sense according to established physics. Dr. Quintala manipulated her portable unit, projecting a 3-dimensional hologram of the Zirian Prime engagement. This is a composite reconstruction based on sensor data from multiple sources. Watch carefully. The hologram showed Zirian Prime's second moon, where 3 small figures had established what appeared to be a temporary camp. The scale was difficult to judge, but the 3 individuals seemed to be using standard humanoid equipment, portable shelters, basic communication arrays, and what looked like personal weapons and gear. The Krillian bioship's approach from this vector, Dr. Quintala narrated, as 3 massive organic vessels appeared in the projection. Each ship was several kilometers in length, their hulls writhing with biological activity. Standard sensors register millions of life forms aboard each vessel, along with organic weapons capable of sterilizing planetary surfaces. HFY had seen recordings of Krillian attacks before, and the sight never failed to disturb him. The bioships moved with predatory grace, their living hulls adapting and shifting as they prepared to descend upon their target. Weapon pods bloomed along their surfaces like malignant flowers, while swarms of smaller organisms prepared to launch toward the planet's surface. The engagement begins here, Dr. Quintala continued as the projection showed the 3 human figures becoming active. This is where our understanding breaks down. What happened next defied conventional explanation. The 3 figures on the moon's surface made no visible preparations for orbital combat. They didn't deploy anti-ship weapons or establish defensive positions. Instead, they simply seemed to coordinate briefly among themselves before the largest of the 3 stepped forward. The sensor readings showed a massive energy spike emanating from the moon's surface, but the source wasn't visible in the reconstruction. The energy signature didn't match any known weapon system. It wasn't plasma, fusion, antimatter, or even exotic matter manipulation. The readings suggested something that registered as both kinetic and directed energy, but with characteristics that violated several fundamental principles of physics. The first Krillian bioship dies here, Dr. Quintala said, as one of the massive vessels simply ceased to exist. There was no explosion, no debris field, no gradual deterioration. The ship was present one moment and gone the next, leaving only empty space where millions of tons of biological matter had been seconds before. General Tharndoke's armor plating creaked as he shifted his weight. Our physicists have analyzed this destruction pattern for 6 hours. The energy required to completely annihilate a Krillian bioship should have been visible from several star systems away. Instead, we register only a brief energy spike that wouldn't power a standard atmospheric shuttle. The projection continued, showing the destruction of the second and third bioships in rapid succession. Each death was identical, a brief energy signature followed by complete annihilation. The entire engagement lasted less than 3 minutes from first contact to the departure of the human soldiers. This violates conservation of energy, Dr. Quintala stated flatly. The mass energy conversion required for this level of destruction should have left thermal and radiation signatures that we could detect from across the galaxy. Instead, we have 3 dead bioships and energy readings that suggest someone fired a few handheld weapons. Ambassador ZXHY studied the projection with growing unease. Could the humans have developed some form of technology that operates outside our understanding of physics? Perhaps a manipulation of dimensional space or temporal mechanics. That's what we initially suspected, Chancellor Vexmira replied, her patterns now cycling through rapid color changes. But we've been monitoring similar engagements across the outer rim, and the pattern remains consistent. 3 human soldiers appear, establish minimal presence, eliminate all Krillian forces with impossible efficiency, and depart. They're not using advanced technology in any conventional sense. General Tharndoke pulled up his own data display, showing a tactical overview of the broader conflict zone. This is our current strategic assessment. Red indicators show confirmed Krillian presence, blue shows our allied forces, and green represents successful defensive actions. The map was a mixture of encouraging and terrifying information. The red zones representing Krillian advance had not expanded in the past day, which was unprecedented since the invasion began. However, green zones were appearing with alarming frequency throughout what should have been indefensible territory. The humans are operating independently of our coordination efforts, Tharndoke continued. They're not responding to our communication attempts, they're not coordinating with allied forces, and they're not following any recognizable tactical doctrine. They simply appear wherever Krillian forces are present and eliminate them. Have we managed to establish any direct contact? ZXHY asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Negative, Chancellor Vexmira replied. However, we have received indirect communication through several colonial administrations. The humans have been providing brief tactical updates to planetary governments, primarily focused on evacuation recommendations and defensive positioning. Dr. Quintala manipulated her display to show a compilation of these communications. The messages are remarkably consistent, professional, direct, and focused entirely on minimizing civilian casualties. They provide accurate intelligence about Krillian movement patterns and offer specific advice for defensive preparations. ZXHY read through several of the transcripts, noting the clinical tone and precise terminology. The humans clearly understood Krillian capabilities and tactical patterns, but their knowledge seemed to extend beyond what should have been possible for a species with limited prior exposure to this threat. There's something else, General Tharndoke said, his voice dropping to what passed for a whisper among the Orc species. My intelligence division has been analyzing Krillian communication intercept from the past several hours. The transmissions are unusual. In what way? ZXHY asked. The Krillian hive mind operates on specific bioneural frequencies that we've been monitoring since the invasion began, Tharndoke explained. Their communication patterns typically show aggressive coordination, tactical adaptation, and expansion planning. However, transmissions from sectors where humans have engaged show something we've never recorded before. Which is? Chancellor Vexmira prompted. Fear, Dr. Quintala answered, her eye stalks focusing intently on her data. The bioneural patterns indicate genuine panic among Krillian forces. They're not adapting to human tactics because they can't understand what's happening to them. From their perspective, their ships are simply vanishing without explanation. This revelation carried disturbing implications. The Krillian hive mind was notorious for its ability to learn and adapt during combat. Previous engagements had shown them analyzing allied weapons in real time and developing countermeasures within hours. The fact that they couldn't comprehend human capabilities suggested that whatever the humans were doing operated entirely outside of conventional warfare. We need to consider the possibility that humanity has been deliberately concealing their true military capabilities, Ambassador Zexhai said slowly. Their previous contributions to galactic conflicts may have been intentionally limited to avoid revealing their actual potential. That would explain their minimal force contribution, General Tharndok agreed. If 3 soldiers can accomplish what our combined fleets cannot, they have no incentive to reveal the full extent of their capabilities. Chancellor Vexmira's patterns shifted to a deep purple, indicating deep thought mixed with concern. This raises significant questions about humanity's position within the Galactic Council. If they possess military technology capable of trivializing threats that challenge our entire civilization, why have they maintained such a modest profile in galactic affairs? The question hung in the air as each delegate contemplated the implications. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council as a minor member species, contributing primarily scientific research and serving in support roles for major initiatives. Their representatives had been respectful, but unremarkable, offering modest assistance and asking for minimal territorial considerations. Now it appeared that Earth possessed military capabilities that dwarfed anything the galaxy had previously encountered. The humans weren't struggling against the Krillian invasion. They were systematically dismantling it with casual efficiency. I recommend we request a formal meeting with Earth's representatives, Zexhai announced after several minutes of contemplation. We need to understand not just their capabilities, but their intentions. A species with this level of military power operating independently of galactic coordination represents both an unprecedented opportunity and a potential threat. Agreed, General Tharndok replied. However, we should approach this carefully. If the humans have been concealing their capabilities, they likely have good reasons for doing so. Aggressive inquiry might cause them to withdraw their assistance entirely. Dr. Quintala's analytical mind was already working through the strategic implications. We should also consider that this might not represent the full extent of human military potential. If 3 soldiers can accomplish this level of destruction, what could their actual military forces achieve if deployed at full capacity? The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. The Krillian invasion had seemed insurmountable just days ago, threatening the existence of galactic civilization itself. Now it appeared that humanity could resolve the crisis single-handedly, which raised uncomfortable questions about the relative power balance within the galaxy. Ambassador Zexhai activated his communication array and began composing a formal diplomatic request to Earth's governing council. The message would need to be carefully worded, acknowledging humanity's contribution while expressing the galaxy's desire for greater coordination and understanding. As he worked, new reports continued to arrive from the Outer Rim. Each transmission brought news of additional Krillian defeats and the mysterious appearance of human soldiers who seemed capable of rewriting the laws of warfare itself. The galaxy was beginning to realize that they had severely underestimated their newest members, and the implications of that miscalculation were only just beginning to unfold. The response from Earth arrived exactly 72 hours after Ambassador Zexhai transmitted his carefully worded diplomatic inquiry. The message was brief, polite, and carried an undertone of dry humor that many delegates found unsettling given the circumstances. The Unified Defense Council of Earth acknowledges the Galactic Council's interest in our operational methodology, the message read. We will be pleased to host a small diplomatic delegation aboard our operations vessel currently stationed in the Kepler 442 system. Please limit the party to no more than 5 individuals due to space constraints. What the message didn't mention, and what had caused considerable consternation among the Council's intelligence division, was that the Kepler 442 system was located deep within what had been heavily contested Krillian territory just days earlier. Current sensor readings showed no Krillian presence in the entire sector, despite intelligence reports indicating it had been a major staging area for bioship construction. Ambassador Zexhai found himself aboard the diplomatic cruiser Harmony of Stars along with General Tharndok, Chancellor Vexmira, Dr. Quintala, and Commander Yexjean of the Tactical Assessment Division. The journey to Kepler 442 took 18 standard hours, during which time the delegates reviewed what little information they had been able to gather about human military capabilities. The picture that emerged was frustratingly incomplete. Earth's official military documentation, freely available through standard diplomatic channels, described a conventional force structure based on kinetic weapons, chemical propulsion, and basic energy manipulation. Nothing in their technical specifications suggested capabilities beyond those of a moderately advanced spacefaring civilization. However, intelligence analysis of their historical military actions revealed patterns that the galactic community had previously overlooked. In every conflict where human forces had participated, their effectiveness had been disproportionate to their apparent technological level. Small human units consistently outperformed larger alien forces, adapting to new threats with startling speed and creativity. Perhaps we've been measuring human capability using inappropriate metrics, Dr. Quintala suggested as they reviewed tactical reports from the Third Centaurian conflict. Their weapons technology may be primitive by our standards, but their tactical flexibility and adaptability appear to exceed anything we've documented. General Tharndok studied the data with professional interest. Human combat doctrine emphasizes individual initiative and adaptation over standardized procedures. Most galactic militaries rely on overwhelming technological superiority and coordinated mass tactics. Humans seem to prefer small unit operations with minimal technological support. But that doesn't explain the Krillian destructions, Commander Yexgene interjected. Small unit tactics and individual initiative cannot account for the complete annihilation of bioships. There must be some technological component we're not detecting. The debate continued as their ship approached the Kepler 442 system, but it was interrupted by an unexpected communication from a system's edge. The transmission came from a vessel that their sensors couldn't properly identify. The energy signature suggested something roughly the size of a frigate, but the configuration didn't match any known ship design. Galactic Council Vessel Harmony of Stars. This is UDC Operations Ship Defiance, came a distinctly human voice through the communication array. You are cleared for approach to coordinates being transmitted now. Please maintain current velocity and heading. Welcome to Kepler 442. What followed was perhaps the most unsettling space voyage any of the delegates had ever experienced. As their ship followed the transmitted coordinates, they began to encounter evidence of what could only be described as systematic destruction on a scale that defied comprehension. Kepler 442 had once been a Krillian breeding ground, where bioships were grown and modified for invasion fleets. The system should have contained dozens of massive organic structures, each one capable of producing hundreds of smaller vessels over a standard cycle. Instead, they found empty space dotted with debris fields that stretched across entire orbital paths. By the ancestors, General Tharndok whispered as their sensors registered the magnitude of destruction. There were enough bioships in this system to threaten the entire galactic core. What happened here? The answer came as they approached the designated coordinates and, finally, got a clear sensor reading of the human operations vessel. The ship that registered as frigate size turned out to be exactly that, a modest vessel with clean lines and minimal external weaponry. Nothing about its appearance suggested capabilities beyond those of a standard patrol craft. Docking with the human vessel proved to be a study in contrasts. The Harmony of Stars was a kilometer-long diplomatic cruiser designed to impress with its size and technological sophistication. The Defiance could have fit in their cargo bay with room to spare. Yet as the delegates transferred aboard the human ship, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were the ones being honored by the invitation. The human who met them at the airlock was unremarkable in appearance. Average height, standard bipedal configuration, wearing a simple military uniform without excessive decoration. Captain Sarachon introduced herself with professional courtesy and began guiding them through corridors that were refreshingly free of the intimidating architecture common to most military vessels. I apologize for the cramped conditions, Captain Shin said as they walked toward what she described as the briefing room. The Defiance isn't designed for diplomatic functions, but my superiors thought it would be easier to bring you here than to arrange a meeting planetside. Dr. Quintala's multiple eye stalks swiveled to examine the ship's interior as they walked. The technology was indeed primitive by galactic standards. Physical controls, mechanical interfaces, and materials that appear to be standard metal alloys rather than advanced composites. Nothing suggested capabilities beyond basic interstellar travel. The briefing room turned out to be a small space with a rectangular table and several chairs that had been hastily adjusted to accommodate alien physiologies. Captain Chun took a seat at one end while the delegates arranged themselves around the table, their various communication devices, and recording equipment creating a forest of technological displays. Before we begin, Captain Chun said, her tone becoming noticeably more formal, I need to clarify the scope of this briefing. I'm authorized to discuss our operational methodology and answer general questions about human military doctrine. However, specific technical details about our weapons and equipment remain classified. We understand the need for operational security. Our primary interest is in understanding how your forces have achieved such remarkable success against the Krillian threat. Captain Chun smiled, and something in that expression sent an uncomfortable chill through several delegates. It wasn't malicious or threatening. It was the smile of someone who possessed knowledge that others would find difficult to accept. The short answer is that we've been preparing for this conflict for a long time, she said. The longer answer requires some historical context that may surprise you. She manipulated a control pad, and the room's display system activated to show a star map focusing on the outer rim territories where the Krillian invasion had begun. Our monitoring stations detected Krillian scout vessels approximately 18 months ago, Captain Chun continued. We've been tracking their expansion and analyzing their capabilities since that time. When the invasion began, we already had comprehensive intelligence on their fleet composition, tactical doctrine, and biological vulnerabilities. General Tharndok leaned forward with interest. Your intelligence network extends beyond Earth's official territorial boundaries? Considerably beyond, Captain Chun confirmed. We maintain monitoring assets throughout this galaxy and several neighboring systems. It's part of our standard defensive protocol. The casual way she mentioned monitoring several galaxies caused Dr. Quintala to nearly drop her recording device. The technological infrastructure required for such surveillance would dwarf anything the Galactic Council had ever attempted to deploy. I think there may be some confusion about the scope of our operations, Chancellor Vexmira said carefully. Earth's official territorial claims are limited to the Sol system and 3 nearby mining colonies. Are you suggesting that humanity maintains military assets across multiple galaxies? Captain Shin paused, apparently consulting some internal guideline before responding. I'm authorized to tell you that Earth's defensive perimeter extends significantly beyond our official territorial boundaries. The assets you've observed in Council space represent a very small fraction of our operational capability. Commander Yexjean's tactical assessment training kicked in as he processed the implications. When you say small fraction, could you provide some context for scale? The 3 soldiers currently operating against Krillian forces represent approximately 0.01% of our available military personnel, Captain Chun replied matter-of-factly. We selected them specifically because their specialties align well with anti-Krillian operations, and because larger deployments would have been inefficient for this scale of threat. The silence that followed was profound. If 3 soldiers represented such a minimal fraction of human military capability, the actual size of Earth's forces was beyond anything the galactic community had imagined possible. I think we may need to reconsider our understanding of human civilization, Ambassador Zexhai said slowly. The population and resource figures in our diplomatic databases suggest a much more modest scale of operations. Captain Chin nodded understandingly. That's accurate based on the information we've chosen to share with the galactic community. For security reasons, we've maintained a deliberately conservative profile while we assess the political and military landscape. How long have you been conducting this assessment? Dr. Quintala asked. Since approximately 1 hour after we achieved interstellar flight capability, Captain Chin replied. Standard first contact protocol includes comprehensive intelligence gathering on all spacefaring civilizations within our operational area. We've been watching galactic civilization develop for quite some time. General Tharndok's armor plating shifted as he processed this information. Are you saying that humanity has been studying us for 2 centuries without our knowledge? Not without your knowledge, Captain Chin corrected. Your intelligence services detected some of our monitoring activities, but they classified them as natural phenomena or equipment malfunctions. We didn't actively conceal our presence, but we also didn't volunteer information that wasn't requested. The revelation that humanity had been conducting covert surveillance of galactic civilization for 2 centuries was staggering enough, but the implications went deeper. If humans had been watching and learning during that entire period, their actual understanding of galactic technology, politics, and military capabilities far exceeded anything their public profile suggested. This explains your effectiveness against the Krillians, Commander Yexjean realized. You've had advance warning and time to develop specific countermeasures. Partially correct, Captain Shin agreed. Though, I should mention that Krillian-type hive mind species are a relatively common threat pattern. Our standard defensive protocols include contingencies for bioship swarms, psionic collective intelligences, and viral civilizations. Dr. Quintala's eye stalks focused intently on Captain Shun. When you say common threat pattern, are you referring to threats within this galaxy? No, Captain Shun replied simply. I mean common within our broader operational experience. The room fell silent again as the delegates contemplated what she had just revealed. Humanity wasn't just more advanced than they had realized. They were operating on a scale that encompassed multiple galaxies and had experience with threat patterns that the local galactic community had never encountered. Ambassador Zexhai found himself struggling to formulate appropriate diplomatic language for the situation. Captain Shun, I believe we may need to arrange for a more comprehensive discussion between our respective governing bodies. The scope of human capabilities appears to be significantly beyond what we had understood. That's certainly possible, Captain Shun agreed. Though I should mention that Earth's current focus is on resolving the Krillian situation as quickly as possible. Once that's complete, we'd be happy to discuss expanded diplomatic relations. How long do you estimate before the Krillian threat is neutralized? General Tharndok asked. Captain Shun checked her chronometer. Current projections suggest complete elimination of Krillian forces within the next 72 hours. We're conducting final sweeps of their staging areas and eliminating remaining bioship construction facilities. The casual way she mentioned wiping out an invasion force that had threatened galactic civilization sent another chill through the assembled delegates. For humanity, the Krillian crisis wasn't an existential threat. It was a minor pest control operation that would be concluded within the week. The request to observe human military operations in action came from General Tharndok. Though Ambassador Zexhai suspected the Gora commander was motivated more by professional curiosity than diplomatic necessity. Captain Shun had agreed to the request with surprising ease, mentioning that there was one remaining Krillian stronghold that required attention before the campaign could be considered complete. The Vanguard Nebula had been transformed by the Krillians into a massive bioship production facility. Intelligence reports indicated that over 300 bioships were stationed there, along with the primary Hive Queen responsible for coordinating the entire invasion. Traditional military doctrine would have required a fleet of at least 50 dreadnoughts supported by hundreds of smaller vessels to assault such a heavily fortified position. Captain Shun informed them that the operation would be conducted by the same 3 soldiers who had been responsible for previous engagements. She seemed genuinely puzzled by the delegate's surprise at this revelation. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez specializes in bioship elimination, she explained as their combined vessels approached the nebula. Corporal Singh handles hive mind disruption operations, and Private Williams provides tactical support and extraction coordination. They're specifically trained for this type of target. Dr. Quintala had been frantically taking notes throughout the journey, her analytical mind struggling to categorize what she was witnessing. Captain Shun, could you clarify what you mean by specifically trained? Are you referring to specialized equipment or enhanced tactical knowledge? Both, plus extensive genetic modification and neural enhancement, Captain Shun replied, as if discussing routine equipment maintenance. Anti-Krillian operations require significant biological adaptation to interface properly with hive mind frequencies and resist biological contamination. The casual mention of genetic modification sent another shock through the assembled delegates. Genetic alteration was technically possible for most galactic species, but it was typically limited to medical applications or basic physical enhancement. The idea of systematically modifying soldiers for specific types of combat operations suggested a level of biotechnological sophistication that exceeded anything in the known galaxy. What type of genetic modifications are we discussing? Chancellor Vexmira asked, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to indicate intense curiosity mixed with concern. Captain Shun seemed to consider her response carefully. I'm not qualified to explain the technical details, but the basic concept involves neural restructuring to allow direct interface with bioneural networks, enhanced immune systems to resist biological weapons, and modified metabolic processes to operate in hostile environments. Standard enhancement package for this type of assignment. Commander Yexgene's tactical training immediately focused on the strategic implications. How many personnel have received this level of modification? Currently active? Approximately 4 million across all specialization categories, Captain Chen answered. Though production capacity allows for rapid scaling if circumstances require additional deployment. The number was staggering. 4 million genetically enhanced super soldiers represented more elite military personnel than most galactic civilizations could field in their entire standard forces. And Captain Chun had described this as current active personnel, suggesting that additional forces could be produced if needed. General Tharndok's professional interest was clearly struggling with a growing sense of unease. When you refer to production capacity, are you describing the modification of existing personnel or the creation of new soldiers? Both approaches are utilized depending on operational requirements, Captain Chen replied. Existing volunteers can be modified and trained within approximately 6 months. Purpose-built personnel require roughly 18 months from genetic template to full operational readiness. The implications of purpose-built soldiers were deeply disturbing to several delegates. The idea that humanity could design and create military personnel specifically for particular types of combat suggested capabilities that bordered on the nightmarish. How many different types of specialized soldiers did Earth maintain? What other threats were they prepared to counter? Their uncomfortable contemplation was interrupted as their combined vessels reached the edge of the Vanguard Nebula. Sensor readings immediately confirmed the scope of the Krillian presence. Hundreds of massive bioships drifted within the nebula's concealing gases, while smaller organic structures indicated active construction and modification facilities. The target represents the primary Krillian command structure for this galactic sector. Captain Chun explained as tactical displays showed the enemy disposition. Eliminating it will effectively end their organizational capability and cause remaining scattered forces to revert to basic survival instincts. Ambassador Zexhai studied the sensor readings with growing apprehension. The accumulated Krillian forces within the nebula could have destroyed entire star systems if allowed to disperse. Perhaps we should observe from a safe distance, Chancellor Vexmira suggested nervously. If the engagement involves weapons capable of destroying multiple bioships simultaneously, there may be significant energy discharge effects. Captain Chin nodded agreeably. Reasonable precaution. We'll maintain position at 30,000 kilometers while the team conducts their operation. What followed was the most educational and disturbing hour of military observation that any of the delegates would ever experience. The 3 human soldiers approached the Krillian stronghold in what appeared to be standard personal transport pods, small, lightly armored vehicles that wouldn't have been considered adequate for atmospheric patrol missions, much less assault operations against massive bioships. The Krillian response was immediate and overwhelming. Hundreds of organic weapon systems opened fire simultaneously, filling space with biological projectiles, corrosive gases, and energy discharges that would have vaporized conventional assault forces. The sensor readings showed energy levels that should have been lethal to any form of life within a 100-kilometer radius. The 3 human soldiers flew directly through this hellish barrage without apparent concern. How are they surviving the defensive fire? General Tharndok demanded, his voice tight with professional disbelief. Personal shielding and enhanced reflexes, Captain Chen replied, as if the answer were obvious. Standard protection for this type of environment. What she was describing as standard protection was absorbing energy levels that would have challenged capital ship defensive systems. The personal equipment being utilized by the 3 soldiers represented technology that was beyond anything the Galactic Council had ever developed or even theorized. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez reached the outer perimeter of bioships and began what could only be described as systematic extermination. The method was similar to what they had observed in previous engagements. Brief energy signatures followed by the complete annihilation of massive organic vessels. However, the scale and speed were vastly increased. Bioships that massed millions of tons simply ceased to exist as Rodriguez moved through their formations. There was no gradual destruction, no debris fields, no secondary explosions. One moment the vessels were present and combat-ready. The next moment they were gone, as if they had never existed. The energy readings still don't make sense, Dr. Quintala muttered, frantically adjusting her sensors in an attempt to understand what she was witnessing. The mass energy conversion required for this level of destruction should be lighting up every sensor array in the sector. Instead, we're registering energy levels equivalent to standard small arms fire. Corporal Singh's approach to the Hive Queen proved to be even more disturbing. Rather than destroying the massive central organism, he seemed to be communicating with it. Sensor readings showed complex bioneural transmissions passing between the human soldier and the alien intelligence. "What is he doing?" Ambassador Zexhai asked with growing alarm. "Hive mind deprogramming," Captain Chen answered calmly. "Corporal Singh is convincing the Queen to shut down her reproductive and command functions voluntarily. It's more efficient than physical destruction and prevents the possibility of consciousness transfer to secondary nodes." The idea that a human soldier could outthink and manipulate a hive mind intelligence that coordinated millions of individual organisms was beyond anything the delegates could have imagined. Hive queens were among the most sophisticated biological intelligences known to science, capable of processing information from thousands of sources simultaneously while maintaining strategic oversight of vast military operations. Yet Corporal Singh was apparently engaging one in direct intellectual combat and winning decisively. How was that possible? Chancellor Vexmira asked, her patterns now cycling through colors that indicated complete bewilderment. Enhanced neural architecture allows direct interface with bioneural networks, Captain Chen explained. Corporal Singh's modified brain can process information at approximately the same rate as a hive queen while maintaining individual consciousness and strategic flexibility. The hive mind's collective thinking actually becomes a disadvantage when faced with a more efficient individual intelligence. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not only developed genetic modifications that allowed their soldiers to match hive mind processing capabilities, but they had done so while preserving individual consciousness and creativity. Operation complete. Rodriguez's voice came through the communication array as the three soldiers regrouped for extraction. All primary and secondary objectives achieved. No complications encountered. Captain Shin nodded with satisfaction. Excellent work. Return to base for debrief and next assignment preparation. General Tharndok stared at the sensor readings showing the complete elimination of hundreds of bioships and one of the most sophisticated military command structures the galaxy had ever encountered. The three humans had accomplished in 37 minutes what the combined fleets of galactic civilization could not have achieved in months of coordinated assault. Captain Chun, he said slowly, I believe we need to seriously reconsider the nature of diplomatic relations between Earth and the Galactic Council. That would probably be wise, she agreed. Though I should mention that this operation represents the completion of Krillian elimination within this galactic sector. My superiors will probably be interested in discussing broader security arrangements now that immediate threats have been neutralized. Ambassador Zexhai found himself contemplating a galaxy where humanity's true capabilities were fully revealed. The political, military, and economic implications were beyond anything galactic civilization had ever faced. They had been operating under the assumption that they were the dominant force in the galaxy, but it now appeared that they had been under the protection of a species whose capabilities dwarfed everything they had ever imagined. The Krillian invasion, which had threatened to destroy galactic civilization, had been eliminated by 3 soldiers in less than a week. What would happen when the galaxy learned that Earth possessed millions of such soldiers and had been quietly watching over them for centuries? The answer to that question would reshape the future of galactic civilization in ways that none of them could yet fully comprehend. 3 weeks after the elimination of the Krillian threat, the Galactic Council convened the largest diplomatic assembly in recorded history. Representatives from over 400 civilizations filled the expanded chamber, with emergency seating arrangements accommodating species that had never before participated in galactic politics. The agenda contained only one item: formal renegotiation of Earth's status within the galactic community. Ambassador Zexhai stood before the assembled delegates, acutely aware that his next words would fundamentally alter the political landscape of known space. The intelligence reports compiled since the Vanguard Nebula operation had painted an increasingly overwhelming picture of human capabilities, and the implications extended far beyond military power. Honored delegates, Zexhai began, his voice carrying across the chamber through universal translators. We face a situation unprecedented in galactic history. Our recent observations of human military capabilities have revealed that Earth's civilization operates on a scale and sophistication level that exceeds our previous understanding by several orders of magnitude. The formal summary took nearly 2 hours to present. Human military forces numbered in the hundreds of millions rather than thousands. Their technological capabilities included genetic engineering, consciousness modification, and energy manipulation systems that operated beyond established physical principles. Most significantly, Earth maintained active monitoring and defensive assets across multiple galactic clusters, suggesting an operational scope that dwarfed the combined territories of all Council civilizations. When Zexhai finished his presentation, the chamber fell into a silence that lasted nearly 5 minutes as delegates processed the magnitude of what they had learned. The first response came from Chancellor Vexmira, her bioluminescent patterns cycling through colors that indicated profound uncertainty. If these assessments are accurate, humanity has been operating as the de facto dominant power in this region of space for centuries while allowing us to believe we were governing ourselves. That's not entirely accurate, came a new voice from the chamber's entrance. The speaker was a human woman wearing a simple diplomatic uniform without ostentatious decoration. She walked calmly to the central podium, her presence somehow commanding attention despite her unremarkable appearance. "I am Director Sarah Hassan, representing Earth's Galactic Affairs Division," she announced. "I've been authorized to address questions regarding humanity's role in galactic security and our future relationship with the Council." General Tharndoke was the first to recover from the surprise of her unannounced arrival. "Director Hassan, our intelligence suggests that Earth has been conducting surveillance operations throughout galactic space without Council knowledge or consent. How do you justify such activities?" Director Hassan's response was delivered with the patient tone of someone who had anticipated the question. "General, Earth's defensive doctrine is based on the principle of protection through preparation. We monitor potential threats across our operational area because we've accepted responsibility for defending the civilizations within that area. Your galaxy has been under our protection for the past 200 years. The casual mention of accepting responsibility for defending the galaxy caused another wave of stunned silence. Dr. Quintala was the first to find her voice. "When you say protection, are you referring to active defense against external threats, or merely monitoring for potential problems?" "Active defense," Director Hassan confirmed. "In the past 2 centuries, we've neutralized 17 major threats to galactic civilization, including 6 invasion attempts by extragalactic species for rogue AI emergences and 7 biological contamination events. The Krillian invasion was simply the most recent. Commander Yexjean's tactical assessment training kicked in immediately. Are you saying that there have been multiple threats equivalent to the Krillian invasion, and they were eliminated without our knowledge?" "Threats considerably more dangerous than the Krillians," Director Hassan replied matter-of-factly. "The Krillians were actually a relatively minor incursion. Most of the previous threats required significantly more extensive intervention to prevent civilizational collapse. The revelation that humanity had been secretly defending galactic civilization against threats more dangerous than the Krillians was almost impossible for many delegates to process. The Krillian invasion had seemed like an extinction-level event, yet humans considered it minor compared to other dangers they had encountered. Ambassador Zexhai struggled to formulate an appropriate diplomatic response. "Director Hassan, why did Earth choose to operate covertly rather than openly coordinating with the Galactic Council?" "2 primary reasons," she replied. "First, our assessment indicated that most galactic civilizations were not technologically or psychologically prepared to participate effectively in defense against major threats. Your military capabilities, while impressive by local standards, would have been minimally useful against the types of enemies we regularly encounter. The blunt assessment of galactic military inadequacy was delivered without malice, but its impact was devastating. The combined might of hundreds of civilizations have been dismissed as minimally useful." "The second reason," Director Hassan continued, "was concern about psychological and social stability. Galactic civilization has developed under the assumption that you represent the pinnacle of local evolution and technological achievement. Learning that a much more advanced species has been protecting you for centuries would likely have caused significant cultural trauma and political destabilization." Chancellor Vexmira's patterns shifted to deep blue, indicating serious contemplation. Are you suggesting that humanity deliberately concealed their capabilities to protect our psychological well-being? That was a significant factor in our operational doctrine, Director Hassan confirmed. Our xenopsychology specialists predicted that sudden revelation of our true capabilities would cause most galactic civilizations to experience varying degrees of cultural collapse, ranging from technological stagnation due to perceived inadequacy to complete social breakdown from existential crisis. Dr. Quintala's analytical mind immediately grasped the implications. But the Krillian crisis forced you to reveal yourselves despite these concerns? The Krillian threat reached a scale where covert intervention was no longer practical, Director Hassan explained. Our usual approach of eliminating threats before they became visible to galactic civilization would not have been possible given their expansion rate and public visibility. General Tharndoke leaned forward in his seat, his massive frame making the reinforced furniture creak. Director, what happens now? The galactic community is aware of human capabilities, and the psychological concerns you mentioned are already manifesting among many civilizations. Director Hassan nodded acknowledgement. Our xenopsychology teams anticipated this scenario. We've prepared several transition protocols designed to minimize cultural disruption while gradually adjusting galactic civilization to the reality of our presence. What do these transition protocols involve? Ambassador Zexhai asked, though he suspected the answer would be as overwhelming as everything else they had learned. Primarily, technology transfer and educational assistance, Director Hassan replied. Earth is prepared to share advanced medical technology, environmental restoration techniques, and sustainable energy systems. We can also provide training in advanced scientific principles and assistance with social development programs. The offer of technology transfer was both exciting and intimidating. Human medical technology could revolutionize healthcare across the galaxy, while their energy systems could solve resource limitations that had constrained development for millennia. However, accepting such assistance would formalize their position as junior partners in relationship with a vastly superior civilization. What would Earth expect in return for such assistance? Chancellor Vexmira asked carefully. Continued peaceful development and cooperation with our security objectives, Director Hassan answered. We're not interested in governing galactic civilization directly, but we do require assurance that our defensive operations can continue without interference. Commander Yexgene's strategic training immediately focused on the implicit message. Are you saying that Earth's protection is conditional on our compliance with your security requirements? Not compliance, Director Hassan corrected. Cooperation. We understand that adjustment to this new reality will take time, and we're prepared to work with galactic civilization to develop mutually acceptable arrangements. The diplomatic language was polite, but the underlying message was clear. Humanity would continue protecting the galaxy, but they would also expect galactic civilization to acknowledge their role and avoid actions that interfered with their defensive operations. Dr. Quintala raised a question that had been troubling many delegates. Director Hassan, how many other galaxies are under human protection? Are we part of a larger network of defended territories? Currently, Earth maintains active defensive operations across 47 galactic clusters, Director Hassan replied. This galaxy represents one of our older protectorates, which is why we've been able to maintain such comprehensive coverage of potential threat vectors. The revelation that humanity was protecting 47 galaxies simultaneously was perhaps the most staggering piece of information yet revealed. The operational scope required for such coverage was beyond anything galactic civilization could have imagined possible. How many civilizations are you protecting in total? General Tharndoke asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Approximately 2.7 million spacefaring civilizations, plus several billion pre-spaceflight societies that require protection from external interference, Director Hassan answered. Earth takes its defensive responsibilities seriously. The chamber fell into absolute silence as delegates contemplated the magnitude of what they had learned. Humanity wasn't just more advanced than they had realized. They were the guardians of civilizations across multiple galaxies, operating on a scale that reduced galactic politics to the level of local municipal governance. Ambassador Zexhai finally found his voice. Director Hassan, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I want to express our gratitude for Earth's protection over the past 2 centuries. We had no idea that we were living under such comprehensive security coverage. You weren't supposed to, Director Hassan replied with what might have been a smile. The most effective protection is often invisible to those being protected. Chancellor Vexmira's patterns shifted to a warm gold, indicating acceptance mixed with profound respect. What steps should we take to formalize this new understanding between Earth and the galactic community? We'll work together to develop appropriate protocols, Director Hassan assured the assembly. The transition period will likely require several years as galactic civilization adjusts to expanded technological capabilities and broader cosmic awareness. Our specialists are available to assist with any challenges that arise during this process. General Tharndoke straightened in his chair, his military bearing asserting itself despite the overwhelming nature of the situation. Director, many of our military personnel are interested in understanding human combat doctrine and technology. Would Earth be willing to provide training opportunities for our forces? Certainly, Director Hassan replied. Though I should mention that effective utilization of our combat systems requires extensive genetic and neural modification. We could provide training in tactical principles and strategic thinking, but full operational capability would require volunteers to undergo the same enhancement procedures used by our own personnel. The offer of human military training was both exciting and daunting. The prospect of galactic civilizations developing their own enhanced soldiers capable of matching human capabilities opened up possibilities that were simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. As the assembly continued, it became clear that galactic civilization stood at a crossroads. They could attempt to maintain their previous independence and continue developing at their own pace, or they could accept integration into humanity's broader defensive network and gain access to technologies that would revolutionize their societies. The choice, Director Hassan assured them, was entirely theirs. Earth would continue protecting the galaxy regardless of their decision, but cooperation would make the relationship more efficient and beneficial for everyone involved. Over the following months, as galactic civilization began to adjust to their new reality, most species chose integration. The benefits of human technology and protection far outweighed the psychological challenges of accepting their position as junior partners in a cosmic-scale defensive alliance. The galaxy was no longer alone in the darkness, and they never had been. Humanity had been watching over them since their first tentative steps into space, protecting them from dangers they had never known existed, while allowing them to develop naturally until they were ready for broader cosmic awareness. The three soldiers who had eliminated the Krillian threat returned to their regular duties, probably already assigned to protect civilizations in distant galaxies who had no idea that their continued existence depended on the vigilance of a species they had never encountered. Such was the nature of humanity's quiet guardianship across the cosmos, effective, comprehensive, and invisible until the moment it needed to reveal itself.